One comment that I often receive in the form of feedback from students over the years is that I can explain my thoughts in a long essay, but I'm having difficulty in converting my thoughts or what I'm trying to express into a graphical representation. So I've decided to put this short discussion on how to transition from cluttered thoughts to an analytical, mathematical, or graphical model. And the reason that we insist on building models is, first of all, is really natural to a human being to do so, even though you may not realize it. Simple children touch a hot surface, and in their brain, they develop a model that there is a correlation between hot surfaces or sources of heat and unpleasant experience of burning and so forth. And uh, every day you make a decision, you're traveling on the road to work and you see a construction, you're delayed, your brain immediately build a model that says, if I leave the house the same time, and you kind of size up, and this is seems to be a construction that is massive enough to be ongoing for weeks to come. So your brain automatically build a model saying that if I left the same time and approach my work from the same route, I will be late by half hour or 1 hour by the time I get there. And you use that model to predict that it will be the outcome the next day if you did exactly the same thing, and use that as a way of solving the problem by either leaving early or taking a different direction or route to go to work. So we do this all day long in minor and significant ways, and we don't realize it. So now that you agree with me that your brain is constantly building models, and that's how you actually learn and grow, and do not repeat the same mistakes over and over, is by constructing those models. Now, how do you go about building or constructing a model? Is identifying the key variables that are involved. In case of let's say going to work and hitting a construction activity, then you basically would assume that the hour that you receive is arrive at work is important to you, and that is a function of traffic. And if the traffic is blocked, then the delay will be higher. And if the traffic is not blocked for whatever reason, in this case construction, then you arrive on time or sooner. So you have identified two variables that are key in the outcome. And so now these relationships can have all different forms. You can have a linear relationship, and they could be positive or negative. Example of a positive relationship would be an upward sloping curve, which means that anytime x changes, y changes in the same direction. So you have a positive relationship, x go in this direction, y go in that direction, and vice versa. Or it could have a negative relationship, x and y, or price and quantity and price, for instance, in the context of economic market model. This would be a negative relationship, meaning that every time this variable changes, then so does this one, except that in opposite direction. Decline in y results in increase in x, and increase in y results in decreasing in x. You could have a nonlinear relationship. You could have a situation that these two variables, x and y, let's say, increase at a decreasing rate, or, or increase at an increasing rate, meaning that the rate at which it is increasing is getting larger and larger. In this case, the rate at which it is increasing is getting smaller and smaller. So this is increasing, but at a decreasing rate. This is increasing at an increasing rate. You could have decreasing, but at a decreasing rate, or decreasing at an increasing rate. These are examples of nonlinear relationships that you can construct if you have some reason to assume that that might be the case. And then you build a hypothesis that you assume these relationships seem to follow. And then you collect data and test your hypothesis to see if it's true or not. Now, in the context of economic thinking or analysis, we are particularly focused on demand side and supply side of any issue that we address. And by demand side, I don't mean necessarily just the demand, but even if which is determined in the marketplace, it could be the demand side for a non-market item that is offered to the population. Clean air is certainly is not something that we have a kiosk at the street corner that you put in some coin and then you get to use clean air because we cleaned up the air pollution through environmental measures and so for that matter. Nonetheless, people, citizens are in the demand side for clean air, and similarly on the supply side, even if a product is offered free of charge, still somebody has to secure resources and mix them together in order to be able to deliver. So therefore, I don't want to really narrowly define this as a market mechanism. And the fact that we may have this model of a demand and a supply doesn't necessarily mean market mechanism. There is a demand for it, for a product at different prices, but it could be that we put a zero price and then the demand will be there at this point, even at zero price. And so therefore, this market model is a good tool that we use very frequently to analyze the topics on hand. And we will build on this model to show you how you use this simple market model to express your thoughts and use it as a basis to do some analytical work. Let's, for example, take a case. Let's say you read an article, and the article is discussing the long medical residents' work hours. They work 80 hours a week, let's say, and there are some people who are arguing that there are some downsides to this when it comes to patient care. They are tired, exhausted, and lead to medical errors. Okay? And so you say, can I maybe build some model that will capture the impact of long hours worked by medical residents on and the possibility of medical errors on, let's say, patient care. So therefore you have uh, quantity of patient care, and you have here price of patient care. Obviously, individuals and citizens who are suffering from some illness, they are in the demand for patient care, and there's a supply of it. Now imagine that we are overworking medical residents and they are making errors. When they make errors, errors cost money and resources. If you're not delivering the product as you're expected, and what you do deliver is damaged, then you're actually imposing cost. So therefore, injecting overworked medical residents can adversely impact patient care. And you say, well, is it affecting the demand side or the supply side? Well, patients are often unaware that a resident who walks into their environment room and examining room and so forth has been overworked. So they don't have any change in their demand for this type of service they receive. However, the resident is overworked, and whatever he or she does is subject to more errors than otherwise. So therefore, the same level of service that used to be provided, if they're overworked, it costs more to deliver the same service because of the potential harm. So the price, if the cost goes up, so does the price of delivering. And that shifts the supply to the left. So as a result, overworked medical residents end up delivering less services. Now, this could say, well, they still see the same number of patients, but the quality is declined, and if the quality is not there, product is not there, if you would think it in those terms. And then what is delivered is at the higher price than before. That's the adverse effect of a resource that is not very effective in what it does. So it raises the cost of production, and therefore any increase in the cost of production will result in lower output and higher prices. Now, if we looked at the same topic from hospitals' point of view, so you have quantity of hospital services, and this would be their fees or prices. Once again, there is a demand and a supply. If we allow residents to work 80 hours per week, they are contributing more to the at least in terms of quantity, to the amount of patient care or services provided by the hospital. So overworked residents actually are helping to produce more hospital services. By restricting their hours, then hospitals have to hire more of them. That is additional expense, and so therefore the hospital services will shift to the left, and that means that lower level of hospital services at higher cost and therefore higher prices. If you looked at the same issue from the perspective of hospital administrators. If you looked at the same issue and you ask the question, should, let's say the article says that that the proposal is out there to let patients know in advance that the medical resident that is examining them or attending to their needs has been on the job in excess of 40 or 50 hours, and give them a choice as to whether they would agree to that arrangement or they would demand that a fresh just sign into the hospital to attend to their needs. So let's say that there are two different institutions, one that allows excessive hours and of medical residents and the other one doesn't. So again, this is a patient care in both cases. And let's in hospital A, it is permitted for residents to work 80-hour shifts. The only difference is that they are not to inform the patient. So the patient cannot change their opinion or formulate a new marginal utility and so forth and so on. And that would not impact their demand for the services. In this organization, Hospital B, patients are informed in advance that the attending physician or resident actually has been on the job in excess of, let's say, 50 hours. And in that case, the question is, would the patients decline the service? If they're informed and they have a choice, then the demand will shrink for those residents, and so therefore this hospital will have less demand for their services, and maybe just because the patients are exposed or less exposed to risk, they will obviously demand less services, but the price elasticity will be different. Meaning that those who are informed of the procedural policy in hospital B will let me backtrack slightly here to kind of collect my thoughts. This hospital that informs the patients, in fact, they may see that the demand for patient care in those institutions will increase, and not only will increase, but patients may be willing to pay more for the services received by hospitals that limit the hours of patient care by medical residents. So therefore, the prices that the patients are willing to pay in those hospitals will be less price sensitive because of the quality that they expect as a result. I hope this helps to some degree to shed the anxiety away from the process of going from your thoughts about an issue to deciding as to whether, first of all, what is the product or service that you want to measure or analyze. Whatever is here, just say that the price has to be priced at the same for the same good or service. There's a demand and supply for it. Then your next question is, does it affect the supply in a positive or negative way? And then if it affects the cost and the supply side in a negative way, then you shift the supply curve to the left. If it affects us in a positive way, then the supply curve shifts to the right. If consumer is more encouraged, more enticed, more interested in a product, the demand will shift to the right and potentially become less price elastic. And if patient is or consumer is dissuaded or doesn't see the value or the utility for the product, then the demand will shrink. And not only that, they may refuse to pay the kind of prices they used to pay and therefore become more price sensitive toward organizations that doesn't deliver the quality that they expect. So by using this simple analytical tool and clarifying in your head as to, well, what is that you're discussing, and therefore is it the supply or demand side, and in what fashion, you can build an analytical tool. And using this tool, then you can play with it in terms of changing the circumstances and determining what will be the outcome. For instance, in this case, if hospital B decided to institute a policy to inform the patient in advance, and that turns into a positive patient experience and outcome, and therefore bigger market share, then you could argue that the services that they offer into the patient care will increase, and over time they might be able to in fact charge higher prices as a result of it. While in this case, their market share will shrink, and they have to lower prices to attract more consumers or more patients. So you could use this tool to analyze the impact of host of issues and predict the outcome in terms of the price and the quantity in the marketplace. I hope this helped to some degree.